Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to attend this session. My name is Shelby Vaklu, and I would be delighted to share my thoughts about how to unravel not the pursuit, but actually the prioritization of happiness today. Technical difficulties. Okay, awesome. All right. So, I spent a lot of time thinking about the whole concept of happiness, and I generally feel that everybody has this thing that they just want happiness. Give me happiness, give it to me right now, and tell me a way to get it. And what I would like to point out is that, generally speaking, as a society and as a community, people do want you to have it. Everybody, in fact, wants you to have happiness. And some examples of those people are the founding fathers. I found it very fascinating that the Constitution, declares life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as an inalienable right. If you think about it, that's a very unusual choice. Most countries you can agree that life, liberty, when you're starting a country, that makes sense. But it must have been really visionary for the founding fathers to think about the pursuit of happiness as something that was an undeniable right. And Thomas Jefferson was famously an Epicurean who followed the concept that maximizing happiness should be a goal for people. So it makes sense that he decided to add that in. Movie stars, the media also kind of propagates this whole concept that you should pursue happiness. And this movie is, of course, a very famous example of that. I don't know if you have seen it, but The Pursuit of Happiness was about a father who's trying to do right by his family, trying to do right by his career, and, in general, trying to make the best of a situation and figuring out how he can leverage everything in his life to get to happiness and pursue it. um, Rappers come under the category of poets and philosophers as well. They sometimes have great ideas. And Kid Cudi is an artist who wrote a song about the pursuit of happiness. It's a great song. You should check it out. But again, the song talks about in his version, it's more of the hedonistic sort of aim that he's just thinking like I want to get happiness, whether it's however he deems he feels happy, he's trying to chase it. So my pitch today is that it should not actually be a pursuit of happiness, but rather a prioritization. And the difference for me is that the pursuit makes it seem like there's this goal at the end of the tunnel that you're trying to get to, and you have to do X, Y, Z to sort of get to happiness. Instead, my argument is that the happiness is actually a journey. It's something that you can choose to prioritize. It already exists in your life. You just have to make sure you're unraveling everything that's important to you and figuring out what makes you happy, and you can have it today. You don't have to wait for retirement for reaching happiness. So, how actually do you prioritize happiness? What sort of constitutes that? And for me, it's basically a three-step process. We begin with awareness, just figuring out what happiness means to us. We acknowledge things that are going well, acknowledge this is what makes me happy, this is what doesn't make me happy, and then also just acceptance of who we are as people, how we go about actually getting happiness, and focusing on that. So let's dive into the first one, which is awareness. Um, if any of you are familiar, this is actually a picture from Bhutan. Bhutan is a tiny mountain kingdom just a little north of India. I actually visited this year and it was quite transformative for me. It's a beautiful country. And they're very unique in the sense that they actually have a gross national happiness index. So most countries are trying to come up with monetary ways of measuring the success in the country, and Bhutan came up with a framework that said, no, we care about leading good, healthy, happy lives, and we're going to find ways to understand if our citizens and if our country as a whole is happy or not. So this is a very, very unique concept. They actually got the UN to adopt happiness index survey, and it was something that they pushed for. So just roughly, they created a framework. I thought it was a great start to just start thinking about our own lives. But they said, the happiness framework is you think about health, like physical and emotional health. You think about where you spend your time. So, are you getting enough time to relax? Are you getting enough time to pursue things that you like, pursue the arts? And do you have opportunities for growth? So, are you able to work the way you like and get educated? And do you have the option to choose your government? Also, about obviously living standards. Do I have enough money, housing, resources, things that I need for my daily life? And most importantly, do I have good, valuable social relationships that make me feel happy with family and with friends? So let's see how we translate this into our own daily life to structure decisions about what to pick, what not to pick, just so that we can maximize our happiness. So I first start with health. Um, the beginning is, of course, physical health. So how I think about it is I try to quantify that, what is a minimum threshold for me to feel that I am physically healthy, to feel that I'm getting enough exercise. And I think for everybody, it kind of runs across the spectrum, and everybody has a different threshold. So for my husband, he needs to play basketball, soccer, and a bunch of other things every week. Otherwise, he doesn't feel like he's getting enough exercise. For me, it's actually just walking. I used to work for Fitbit, so counting my steps comes very naturally to me now. And so part of that is I'm okay structuring the decisions in a way that even if my job is demanding enough that it doesn't allow me time to go to the gym, as long as I get enough steps in the day, that is good enough for me. So maybe I can take my walks, like my one-on-ones, while walking instead of sitting in a room, or if there's a treadmill at work, sign me up. Then mental health. This is something I feel which is an underserved area. A lot of people don't actively think about lowering stress as a whole. It's considered, like, especially in corporate life, a lot of times it's just assumed that if you're going to be working, if you're going to have a tough job, stress is a given. And again, I would like to push on that argument that it's not a given. There are things that will stress you out more than other things. For some people, it might be if a manager asks you every 5 minutes if you've done your work. Maybe that's super stressful. For others, maybe it's not. For others, maybe it's just you don't like your work location, that it's a dark, dingy office, and it doesn't make you feel good. So actively try to think about what makes you feel mentally calm and mentally in a place where you can enjoy life, and make sure that you try to make those trade-offs. Then how do you actually use your time? This one is very interesting. The relaxing part definitely comes up. A lot of people really value their sleep, like me. I really like my sleep. But again, try to quantify. Is it the number of hours that you care about, or the timing of those hours? For me, it's the timing of those hours. I would ideally like my 8 hours of sleep and at a regular cadence. But honestly, even if I got a little less than 8 hours, that's okay, as long as nobody asks me to wake up at 5 a.m. And those are choices that you can make. I recently had a company that gave me an offer for a job which required me to work with New York and get up regularly at 6 a.m. I'm on the West Coast. So that was something that, like, I knew that it sounds really silly, but I knew that over time, having to get up every day and be alert at 6 a.m. would really get to me. So I don't mind lesser hours of sleep, but I do like the timing of it. Then there is the thing of creating. So a lot of people have the need for a creative outlet, and for different people that might be a very very different thing. Some of us like to draw, some of us like to sing, some of us like to do crafts. Whatever it is, like, it might be something very different for you. So again, I think everybody likes to have it in some form, but again, figure out what is that minimum threshold of that form for you. I love to create, but I would ideally again like time where I had enough time to come back home. And I'm not a good artist, I'm a pretty bad one, but I still like to do it. But instead, I actually ended up with a job. I'm an analyst, so there is a creative part to that. Like, I create visualizations, I create decks which are presented, and I do feel that it allows me to have a little bit of that creative outlet. So again, try to make that trade-off. That is it something that you can incorporate in your work? If not, does your work give you enough time to pursue it outside of work? And then finally, to play. Again, everybody has a different thing. For some people, it is sports. For some people, it is going to plays, going to concerts. Whatever that thing is, again, just as an example, like, I do like to go to concerts, but honestly, I don't have the money or the time to go to a concert very frequently, and I'm okay with that. But if it came down to zero during the year, I would probably not be okay with it. So I want to make sure I live in a place which allows me that easier access, where I don't have to drive 3 hours for a concert, because my city never has a concert, because it is something that I do value just a little bit. Then do I have growth opportunities? This one, I think it's actually like, because this is still a professional event. I wanted to dive a little bit into this. How much of a growth opportunity you have at work is very very critical to how happy and satisfied you feel. And again, think about it. Like, try to break down specific things that you're aiming to get out of it. Do I value, like, just having a satisfying work environment, or is getting promoted and getting a raise at a certain degree something that I care about? This can be really critical when you're looking for a new job, to ask those right questions. Ask them, what does my growth path look here? And if they tell you, yeah, we will value you and treat you nicely, and that's not your framework for what you want out of your life, then it's a good thing to know upfront, so that you can either refocus on a different opportunity or double down on something that does fit you better. Then everybody would like certain opportunities to learn. Again, it's different for different people. Some people have a real interest in pursuing higher education and sort of going really far with it. You have the opportunity to figure it out with your work. Some companies will enable that, they will support that in terms of money or even time off, for you to be able to pursue what you learn, what you want to learn. And other companies will not. So again, actively, like, spend time thinking about, like, how much do I want to invest in learning, and how critical is that for me to make sure I find the right fit for myself. This last one is my favorite. So this applies to, the contribution part is something that applies to work, but it also is something that applies to our society, like where we live. So if I really value that, the government that I have, or the place where I live, should care about my opinion, and I have a voice in how things around me change and evolve, then choose accordingly. There are lots of companies that are they're very upfront about this, that there's a hierarchical structure, like, unless you're super senior in leadership, we are not really, this is, we don't care about your opinion. Whereas some companies say that they come from that perspective of every employee's opinion is valuable, it's something that they care about. So find your fit. Like, again, I am an activist, so I really want to be in societies that care about my opinion, but a lot of people are not, and they would not prioritize this as something that they try to optimize for. Living standards. So this one, most people, I think, the default that society tells us is that when you're choosing opportunities that might be a right fit for you, that it starts and ends with money. That money is sort of the big thing that you're trying to enable, that you're trying to maximize for. And that is sort of everything that you want to do in life costs money, and so you should maximize for money. I instead think that money is something that is a means to an end, and really there's probably a minimum threshold of money that you need, something that allows you for enough savings and enough things to just sort of live where you're at. But really think about, like, what are you trying to maximize with money? Is it a big house, enough time for a vacation? These are just two examples, but there are jobs that will not pay you a whole lot of money but give you a gigantic house along the beach, because it's a position that comes with that perk. So you can make those trade-offs if you are very clear about what exactly it is that you're trying to maximize for. A lot of companies will pay for your child's education, so then maybe you don't need as much money just up front, because the company is going to take care of your child's education. And some of them, require you to travel very extensively. So if that is what you want money for, to maximize vacations and travel, you might already get it as a built-in in some of the opportunities that you're pursuing. And lastly, I think the most important one is social relationships. So I talk to a lot of people who often say that family to me is everything. Like my number one value is family, and that is what I care about. But like again, really think about that. That if your number one value is family, does it mean that you want to spend time with them? Does it mean that you want a close, deep relationship with them? Or are you thinking of yourself as a provider, that I want to provide for my family? Because all of those things are actually very different things. If you like the role of a provider, there's nothing wrong with that, but know that then you are going to deprioritize time with your family, because you would rather sort of spend your effort in making sure you're providing for them. And again, with family and friends, again, ideal world, you care a lot about your family, you care a lot about your friends, but honestly, there are trade-offs to make there too. When people have children, especially in the early stages, children take up a lot of time and energy, and you may deprioritize your friends at that time, because everybody understands. But like, really think about it. Like, would you like a situation where 5 years later it becomes incredibly hard for you to pick up again with your friends? So think about that actively. That of course, you have an immediate thing that you want to prioritize your children, but do you want to spend at least a little bit of time making sure your friends don't feel completely abandoned? Because it takes a village to raise children too. So everyone at some point needs friends. So make sure to try to balance that. Because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is you're trying to maximize building connection and closeness. Even if you are an introvert, like even then, like there is value in having deep bonds with at least someone, whether it's one person or 20. I don't actually think 20 deep bonds is very possible, but like actually think about like what would cause me joy in the long term that I should be trying to optimize for right now. So disclaimer, in case anybody, trigger warning, you're going to see a chart. So just warning everyone. I am an analyst, so I kind of have to include it. It's part of my contract. So this is just an example. I just made this for fun, actually. The intention here is to figure out, once I know what I want, how do I actually get it? So I came up with two things. Any given activity, how much of a happiness boost does it give me? How long does it last? Do I remember it the next day? Do I remember it a week later? And also, how much of an effort is required to get it? So this again, it's more intended as a thought exercise, that you actively try to think of what is the return of investment on me doing something. So the interesting one here, and I'm not at all ashamed to admit it, is that taking a nap and hiking actually give me equal amounts of happiness boost. Yeah, it's the truth, and now you know it. But Hiking for me takes a lot more effort than napping, clearly, but I remember it for the same amount of time. It, both things make me happy, but just, it doesn't last longer. So, of course, sometimes when hiking is also, it's also something that I do with friends. That's a different angle, but just by themselves, taking a nap by myself, hiking by myself, I will pick the nap any day because it just gives me more of a happiness boost for the amount of effort required. So like this, I plotted like a couple of things. I try to do this exercise every couple of months to just keep track of how I'm feeling about various things and how happy they make me and how much of an effort I have to put into them. So yeah, think actively about what gives you joy. Think about how much effort it requires, and sometimes what you find is that a few of these things, the effort required reduces in conjunction with other things. That maybe if my office was located in a hill, I would just end up hiking more by default, anyways, and then it would not require as much effort. All right. So the next step, now that we are aware of what makes us happy and we've spent some time thinking about that, let's move on to acknowledgement. So I really believe that a lot of happiness comes our way when we regularly, consistently, and carefully show gratitude. And the first thing is gratitude to the entire universe. You don't actually know how different things are interacting in the world around you that actually create those moments or bring about those people in your life and or just situations that bring you joy. So if you actively take the time to make a note of or just thank the universe that I am so grateful that I randomly happen to meet this person who is now a great friend and a big influence in my life. The universe likes positive reinforcement too, and maybe the universe will send more of that your way. Then of course I think it's a great thing to thank people in your life. So even for the smallest things, if you have a coworker who regularly has lunches with you and you like that little break in the day, or you have a friend who is always there for you to listen, like regularly thank people for doing things or for just even supporting you in things that bring you joy. It really, again, like that cycle of sort of acknowledging to them that I appreciate this, makes them feel good, and also sort of showcases that this is what you like, this is what you would like, and people are more likely to do something if they know that you appreciate it, if they know that you acknowledge it. And I actually take this a step further, maybe not just for people that you know personally, but if your government is doing something that you like, or write to your local government, write to people who are in power and you appreciate that they're doing something to solve a larger problem. Again, I think definitely the government also really feeds off of contact and feedback from citizens that are saying that we appreciate this. Sorry. Yeah, and finally, thank yourself. So again, you make active choices throughout your day, throughout your weeks, where you are picking one thing over the other because you know that this is going to cause me happiness, is going to cause someone else happiness. So I actually recommend writing down, like, even if it's a simple thing, but actually journaling to keep track of things that you care about, things that you like. It's a healthy reminder for yourself as well, because you also then keep better track of this is what makes me happy. I should try to sort of make sure that I don't lose focus of it. And finally, we come to acceptance. So this one, I think, I picked just one example, but I think the first thing is that we have to accept the truth about ourselves. Sometimes it's things that we would love about ourselves, that, yeah, I'm a super fit person, I like doing this. That's maybe easier to admit than what I had to go through, that I'm an activist and I feel the need to stand up when I see something that bothers me. It is important for me to speak up about it, and so stand up for yourself, whatever that is that makes you feel just in alignment with yourself. there's nothing wrong with it. You were built a certain way, you have been nurtured in a certain way, and so whatever is important to you, make sure that you acknowledge it and stand up for your own causes of joy. And also, accept support. So a lot of times we are fearful of asking other people for help or asking other people to chime in on things that are important to us. But in my experience, I think people love being asked for help. I think everybody likes it. They feel important. They feel that you're treating them as a friend or as a mentor by asking them for help. So speak up when you need something, and absolutely do not be shy of accepting help and accepting support. And finally, to sum it all up, I think just actually accept happiness. It's sometimes hard to accept joy because we feel like we don't deserve it, or we feel that we haven't worked hard for it, like it's just coming. So it kind of feels a little uncomfortable to, just accept happiness. And sometimes you feel that maybe if I am happy today, I won't be happy tomorrow, or that I want to sort of pace out my happiness in my life, or that if I'm happy, maybe my colleague won't be happy or my friend won't be happy. So in that, keep reminding yourself that happiness is absolutely not a zero-sum game. Your happiness today does not prevent you from being happy tomorrow, and your happiness does not take away from someone else's happiness. So really, like, allow yourself to be happy, allow yourself to focus on joy, and I think that will be great. So yeah, that is, that just sums it up. If you make the choice to prioritize happiness and not just keep chasing it, I really think that awareness, that acknowledgement, and that acceptance can really ensure that joy is yours. Thank you so much for listening.